Today is Thursday, August 10th, 2021, and I have just gotten the news that Andrew Cuomo's political career has come to an end. Now, the political career of Andrew Cuomo is something I've had quite a lot to say about. I actually made a YouTube video about it that nobody in the world saw. I think Melissa might have seen. You saw a rough draft or something? Okay, you saw it in process because it was deleted accidentally from my hard drive before it could ever be shared with the public. I'm going to talk about the Andrew Cuomo affair and its implications and the lessons we all have to learn in our own lives connected to this, set of important, interconnected legal, moral, and political issues. And then what I imagine will be the second half of the video, I'm going to answer a question that is completely unrelated from a supporter on Patreon, a question that is following up further on issues of what is culture. So that's why the title of this video I have separately, Culture and or as Cultural Genocide. So we've got a lot to talk about. If you guys want to hit the thumbs up, if you want to ask questions, I can reply to what you're saying in the audience also. I'm quite happy for you to take this in one direction or another. Now, okay, so where to begin? Andrew Cuomo, his situation with Charlotte Bennett is something I can relate to on many different levels and from many different angles. And I neither sympathize with Andrew Cuomo nor Charlotte Bennett. Now, interesting factoid, we do not know the precise age of Charlotte Bennett. I saw it reported in newspapers that she was 24 when the story first broke, which is now 6 months ago or 8 months ago. I mean, this is quite a while ago. And I see her age now estimated at 25. She graduated from university in the year 2017. She was hired by Andrew Cuomo into his office in 2019. Okay, I'm just double checking on screen. That is from memory, but I believe that's what it says. So yes, it was right at the beginning. So January of 2019. So she had maybe been out of university for a year and a half. I don't know exactly what month she graduated from university. Graduated from university 2019. She ends up becoming a researcher, a policy advisor, and the senior briefer to Andrew Cuomo in the year 2019. She is only in his employment for 1 year and 11 months. We could round that off and say 2 years. She has a meteoric career in the office of Andrew Cuomo. Now, let me tell you something. I would be much more highly qualified to be a policy advisor or a senior briefer to Andrew Cuomo. I have much more of the formal education and informal life experience and background that would be required to take on those jobs. It would still be a very intimidating, very difficult job for me to take on. I would think about it carefully if I were offered a position in government like that, specifically working for Andrew Cuomo or for the governor of New York, okay? I am an old, ugly major in political science. I really do understand, I really do have the preparation necessary to understand the gravity of the task in being a senior briefer. So what this is, and I have applied for a job like this once. I'll say a little bit about that. I only once applied for a job like this and didn't get it. And in some ways, of course, I can be glad I didn't get it. You're going to have a sense now of what this job is, all right? You are the final stage of research and analysis where there is some complex issue and there may be a stack of reports, some of which are from 10 years ago, some of which are from 20 years ago, and very likely some of which are kind of breaking news being published by the New York Times or some mainstream source like that, right? And you have to take all this information, put it together, and decide in 5 minutes what it is the governor needs to know. So a great example of this, I'm sorry, I forget the exact details, but in Flint, Michigan, a couple of years ago, there was a bad decision made. I'm sorry, it was the governor, wasn't it? So I think ultimately the responsible, right? So the governor was responsible, but I think the mayor was also, like, there were a few people involved, but ultimately, the governor was probably given a 5-minute briefing on the water pollution issue and probably was given a briefing by someone who knows just as little about water pollution as Charlotte Bennett knew in the year 2019. So I'll say a little bit more about her education, her level of preparedness, but you should hire someone old and ugly for that job. That's a deadly serious, incredibly important job. And no matter how judicious and wise and sagacious you may be as a researcher, there is really a special talent in looking through this stuff, noticing the contradictions, noticing the problems. What do we know? What do we not know? And the ultimate question is, what is actionable in this advice? And then getting your elected official on the right page. He knows the right facts. He can answer questions given to him by the press. He knows what the problem is. And ultimately, he knows what the solution is. Like, in some ways, you're the most powerful person in all of government. Okay. That was this young woman's role. Okay. She had only graduated from university a year and a half earlier. Okay. Now, so I have a lot more to say about this, but let me just ask you the stage. Why? Why did he hire her? Why didn't he hire me? Okay. Let's be egocentric about it. Let's put it in that kind of perspective. He could have had a charming, erudite, highly educated, highly experienced person with a degree in political science like me, namely me. I can't name anyone else like me. I don't know anyone else. I would have been a candidate for that job. Okay. So now I'm going to put in Charlotte Bennett into Google image search, right? Oh, and here are some photos of what she looks like. Here she is. Okay, here's the photo I'm gonna use. Here's her hugging Andrew Cuomo, posing for a picture. Okay, guys, I'm gonna share this. Probably is a really long link. If you guys do not know what this young woman looks like, it's okay. The link is too long. I can't use that. Okay, I'm gonna try to share with you guys a link in case you have no idea what this young woman looks like. Let's get an image of her here. Oh, here we go. Very respectable turtleneck and glasses. I assure you, this is safe for work. Nothing, no bikini shots here. There you go. That's what this young woman looks like. You tell me, why did Andrew Cuomo hire her? And once he hired her, she only worked there for 1 year and 11 months. Why did he keep promoting her to higher and higher levels of responsibility until ultimately she was the senior briefer? This really crucial linchpin positions. And, now we can be honest about who Andrew Cuomo is too. He's not a great intellectual. He's not someone who's. How much does Andrew Cuomo know about RNA vaccines and mRNA vaccines and the problems he had to suddenly govern in the middle of a medical crisis? Yes, in case you didn't know, she was a senior policy advisor for health prior to becoming senior briefer. Yes, what background do you think she had in health sciences and hospital management and in managing a unique crisis such as unfolded in the year 2020? I mean, already starting in 2019. What? Oh, yes. So let's come back to that question of her university. She is a graduate of Hamilton College. Now, Melissa, have you ever heard of Hamilton? Melissa is I will have you know that Forbes in 2019 rated it 59th in America's list of top colleges. I will have you know, not universities, college. Among liberal arts colleges, another ranking service rated it 25th. Okay, so look, Hamilton College, if it were possible for someone to have formal education in political science at such a high level that they're ready to go directly from the university into being the briefer for Andrew Cuomo or being the health policy analyst for Andrew Cuomo. Okay, I don't think anyone is that prepared. It was straight out of university. I wasn't prepared for that when I finished my BA in political science. Okay, no chance. But if there is anyone on earth with that level of preparation for that level of responsibility, it would not be this young woman having completed her studies at what I would call a bird college, Hamilton College. That's old-fashioned slang. Okay, and what was her specialization? What was her area of expertise at Hamilton College? Women's studies. Why did you hire this woman for this job? She is the wrong woman for the job. She's the wrong person for the job. She was apparently 23 years old, maybe 22 years old. It's not clear. We don't know. She had just finished her bachelor's degree in women's studies at a bird college, Hamilton College. Are you seriously telling me, Andrew Cuomo, that you didn't hire her because you're attracted to her? This was an incredibly important, incredibly powerful position you put her into. She was your health policy advisor, and then she goes on to be your senior briefer. For a full year. She was your top. This is, the research and analysis side of political science, and specifically your senior briefer. This is on the basis of a BA in women's studies with 2 minors in psychology and creative writing. Oh. All right. Now, we know some other things about this young woman. You can watch the interviews with her. Okay, look, guys. Some of you in the audience, some of you don't like me. Okay, let's be honest. You can say it. All right, we have an open conversation. You can let me know how you feel about me. Okay, all right. This is government. All right, this is executive level politics. You need someone who is, in the parlance of the Wu-Tang Clan, in the parlance of rap music from the 1990s, you need someone on your team who is going to give it to you raw. Okay, you need someone who has the self-confidence and acumen and perspicacity. No, Governor, you got it wrong. That's the other way around. You need someone who is on your ass on the details. You need someone who is on point and holding you to a higher standard, who is briefing you, for her, first on health policy in the middle of a pandemic. And then secondly, she was promoted even higher. So she's the briefer for everything. So she's in charge of everything, all the research and analysis on every political issue. Homelessness, police brutality, healthcare. This is who you're trusting to do this. You can tell just watching the interviews. This is not someone who is going to give it to you raw. This is not someone who is tough enough and self-confident enough to really get. And again, if you're the one doing the research, you're the research analyst, and you're the brief. And I have been in that position in some jobs. I get into it. And there's someone else who is in effect the spokesperson for the organization, the person presenting the research. Like, no. It's not 15%. It's 50%. You screwed it up. They make those mistakes all the time, like with no bad intentions. And you know what? Sometimes there are bad intentions. Sometimes people in positions of power are susceptible to wishful thinking, self-fulfilling prophecies and so on. They want to believe something, and you have to talk them out. No. You're reading it this way, but that's not the policy recommendation, and that's not what happened. No. We already tried that 20 years ago. They changed the law, and then they changed it back because it was a failure. You've got to know the background on all the legislation, upcoming, outgoing, controversies that are in the newspaper, controversies that aren't yet in the newspaper. Say, hey, this is what's coming up next, big guy. This is what you got to be, this is what you got to be on point about. You need someone who is really tough and mean with you, let alone with the public. They may have to stick up for you. I mean, that's another question. Hey, what happens when you have a sex scandal? Do you have someone like this in your team, and they're tough and they're mean, but they're on your side? This girl is not on his side, in case you haven't heard. Now his political career is over. Now, you guys know the word dungarees? I'm going to cut it. Dungarees. Let me look up here the etymology of dungarees. What is the etymology? Okay, maybe Sanskrit. Wouldn't be surprised. What is the etymology of dungaree? A coarse cotton stuff, generally blue, worn by sailors. From Hindi, dungri, coarse calico. So there we go. So that is a real British Empire piece of slang that has come into modern English. So another example of that, by the way, shampoo, juggernaut. Okay, so in the 1610s, dungaree came into English. A bungalow. Thank you, Melissa, coming through with the Sanskrit cognate etymologies. Okay. Dungarees. Now, what is the difference between dungarees and a bib overall? Can anyone tell me? Maybe it's the same thing. I'm not sure. We're doing a Google image search here. Okay, it looks like bib overall is a bit more specific. Like there's kind of a range of garments that could be dungarees, whereas the bib overall is a specific type of dungaree. That's what I'm getting here from the internet. Okay. So if you don't know dungarees, if you don't know this exotic foreign Hindi word, okay, if you were the governor of New York State, some of the people you employ are beautiful, and some of them are ugly. And let's just say you're hiring them all according to their merit, not their works. Would it hurt to have a dress code where everyone wears dungarees? Would it make the office better or worse. You say, you know what? Some of us are fat, some of us are thin, all of us need pockets. Every single person here is going to wear bib overalls or dungarees, and that's it. I made the decision because I'm in charge of this office. Okay, you can go full painter pants. I'll let you identify who's understand. What would be wrong with that? Where you just say to people, look, guys, we're not here to seduce one another. We're not here to show off how much money we've got, like to wear expensive suits. I'm going to make life easier for everyone. You know what? If you come to the office and you're wearing your gym outfit because you went to the gym before work or something, that's fine. Go in the bathroom and change and put on the dungarees over them, because you can wear dungarees. If it's cold enough, you can wear them over pants. Like, you can have something else on. You can have tights on or something, and wear dungarees. Fine. But you know what, ladies and gentlemen, all of us at the office from now on can wear bib overalls. Let's actually desexualize the office, right? Let's really actually do it. Like, I've never heard of anyone. I mean, we live in this, so-called woke world of politics. Look at the right-wing guys in politics. I won't be able to name these guys, but there are all these guys attached to Trump, the pro-Trump Republicans, and all of them would have these kind of half-naked women in conservative power suits. The conservative right-wing, they managed to have women wearing clothing that's simultaneously conservative and pornographic. They have these women next to them. And it's like, oh, that's your executive assistant, or like that's your PR person. Like, okay, the former prime minister of Italy and stuff. All these right-wing guys, where like for them the status symbol is to have this good-looking woman in revealing attire. It's a huge problem on the right wing, but it's a problem on the left also. Like, why are we doing this to ourselves? Don't sexualize the workplace. And as I've gotten older, I've realized, like, I seem to be uniquely gifted at separating sex from politics. Why is that so hard for people? Separating sex from work, sex from life in different ways. So, like, Melissa's been with me now for more than 4 years. And even within this relationship, she's been through this with me. There are times when I know, and I'm talking to a woman, and okay, I'm sorry, I have all kinds of friends who are not good looking or who are ugly. You don't have to be good looking, my friend. But sometimes there's a good looking woman who's talking to me, and I just say to her straight up, I say, oh, no, yeah, she's good looking, but that's not what our relationship's about. Like, no, that's not who she is to me. I knew a good looking woman, and we're both studying Chinese. And when I talk to her, I'm talking about studying Chinese, period. There is no flirtation. There's it doesn't come up unless, okay, I was going to say unless we start talking about weight loss or something, but we don't. I don't talk to people. I'm just being honest. I never once talked to her about weight loss or getting in shape or something. I don't talk to people with it. I'm sorry. I guess I have some friends who are overweight and they talk to me about weight loss because they want my advice. They think I'm better off than they are. So yeah, I mean, sometimes I talk to some people with weight loss. But like where I have a friendship with someone, it's like, okay, this is what we have in common is politics, or this is what we have in common is studying this language. And that's what our relationship is about. And if you happen to be a beautiful woman, I am going to treat you exactly the same way I would treat a man in your position in this relationship. I'm going to treat you exactly the same way I would treat an older, ugly, or fat person, because that's not what this is about. And I'll be honest with you, I don't feel like that's a strain for me. I don't feel like I'm suppressing something or sublimating. I really don't. I really think, like, as human beings, you put people into different categories. This person is my colleague. This person is my close friend. This person is my lover, or this person is, you have, yeah. So we have some comments here. Yeah. Someone suggests, wear the pregnancy flight suits. Okay, I can go next level. How about beekeeper costumes? You know the beekeeper outfit? No. Okay, the point is, like, if you can't discipline yourself inwardly, you can discipline yourself outwardly. You know what I mean? And like, where does it stop? Like, the workplace. Is it a place to display your wealth, your athleticism, and your sex appeal? Because the clothes you wear and the jewelry you wear, it's all these things. You can show off how athletic you are. Is that what you want your workplace to be like and be about? And look, I know I had a friend who worked at a gym. She basically did the sales pitch at the gym. She didn't give people instruction and physical training. But her job, I remember I went and visited her at work, and I was like, oh, you work with a lot of good-looking people. I mean, it was kind of blatant that the job was like seductive towards men. It was like these women were like to come out with a clipboard and say, hey, can I talk to you about signing up for a membership? They were as good looking as possible and wearing as revealing attire as possible. But, and there was a different kind of game with women who are presumed to be heterosexual. I mean, if they're lesbian women, I don't know what they do. But, where it's, saying to these straight women, hey, you can look like me, like you can be as attractive as me. Like, I get it. There are some people work at strip clubs. Some people do whatever. Okay, fine. But like for me, when I go to the bank, I do not want the bank tellers to be dressed up like sexy cocktail waitresses. I really don't want that. And we're living through a period of time on the left and the right and the center where people seem to have accepted that every workplace should be women dressed up like sexy cocktail waitresses, like whether it's the bank or it's Andrew Cuomo's office, nobody sees the problem with this. Now, look, if you can discipline yourself inwardly, if you can have that kind of detachment, it is 10,000 times better to have a workplace where everyone is an angel and nobody has to wear dungarees. Nobody has to wear bib overalls. All right. Okay. But you know what? I mean, even then, you're actually making life better for the women themselves by relieving them of this pressure. So, okay. I knew someone who worked for a right-wing television station. Here's my attempt to anonymize this anecdote. And he said, it's obvious. If you've ever watched Fox News or any of these, you can see it. By the way, there was a movie made about this specifically with Fox News called Bombshells. Not a great movie, but there was a movie. It's interesting that a movie was made about this political issue. And the movie Bombshells was really about the workplace politics and the misery of being in a workplace where it's all these women and each is trying to be sexier than the other. And the men are not allowed to actually seduce them or sexually harass them, but everything's kind of constantly on the line where they kind of sort of do. And then ultimately there are allegations of, people crossing the line, but where the whole workplace is held on this needless kind of razor's edge of tension. And where all the women, again, in that case, it really is what I just described before. It's this kind of conservative Barbie doll thing where it's like you're simultaneously being as conservative as possible and as sexually provocative as possible. And nobody sees the contradiction in this. There's a lot of that going on. I am not saying the left is better. I think the same. I think I look, they're both equally bad, but I mean, we have a lot of the same issues going on the left. I mean, the left compensates by just people accusing each other of rape more often, I guess. I mean, it's a really mutually invidious, dangerous situation that we're putting ourselves into again and again. And look, I don't comb my hair in the morning. Okay. I roll out of bed. I can walk out of bed and walk straight out my door and go to the bank or go to the bakery or I can do whatever I want to do. I never put on makeup. I don't put on glasses. I don't brush my hair. I don't do anything. I know the privilege I have living the way. This is one of the reasons I started shaving my head as a t-shirt. Pardon me. One of the reasons I started shaving my head as a teenager. Just the amount of time and effort women are expected to put in. I mean, okay, so if you have a job, this is a serious job, like we're talking about Andrew Cuomo. You're doing this research, you're doing these briefings. Can't you take the pressure off them a little bit by saying, look, don't wear high heels. Don't wear a skirt. Don't wear nylons. Don't wear this sexy outfit that shows off your cleavage while pretending to be conservative. Don't wear earrings and necklaces and makeup and all this crap. You know what? We're going to have a dress code. Everyone is going to wear dungarees. Everyone's going to wear bib overalls so that you don't have to deal with it. So that you get to wake up in the morning and just put on the bib overalls and go to work. And that's it. Now, look, does it solve the deeper underlying problem? Like if Andrew Cuomo, really likes the shape of your body underneath those dungarees, of course he's still going to see it. Well, let me tell you something. Millions of years of evolution. Men don't have X-ray vision, but we're evolved to feel and act like we do. course, I mean, a man can fall in love with a woman who's wearing a sack of potatoes. There's no doubt. And he'll have a very vivid imagination as to just what the size and shape of those potatoes are underneath that sack. There's no doubt, all human evils can still progress with everyone dressed in this kind of baggy costume. But still, you're making everyone's lives easier every day. And you're making a very clear symbolic commitment to saying, no, this is the workplace. This is a nightclub. They're two different things. And that's it. We're not going to dress like we're at a nightclub. We're not going to dress like we're cocktail waitresses. We're going to respect each other or disrespect each other on the basis of, our actual intellectual integrity and what we contribute to this. So on and so forth. So look, I have now said my piece. I feel like the fundamental sin that Andrew Cuomo is guilty of is hiring this young woman in the first place. Okay? It's not just that hiring her for this job was incorrect. I am saying hiring her for this job was morally wrong. It is not plausible that her personal appearance and sex appeal and Andrew Cuomo's romantic feelings towards her, that they were unrelated to her hiring for this position and her being repeatedly given promotions within the first year of being there. It is not credible that her appearance was irrelevant to this. And again, this is the governor of New York State. Okay, for a senior position like this, a really important position in the government of New York State, are you telling me you can't get someone better than a new graduate, someone who maybe graduated a year and a half before, someone who graduated in 2017, and she's hired? I mean, presumably the interviews would have been in 2018, because she's hired in January of 2019 for this senior position in the government of New York. You can't get someone more experienced, more distinguished than someone whose only credential is a BA in women's studies from Hamilton College. Okay? I don't care what this dude says to me. Like, if you ask, and nobody asked him this. Okay, Andrew. Okay, Governor Cuomo. Take me back to what you were thinking during this job interview. He was thinking that he wants to fuck her. Take me back to what you were thinking when you promoted her repeatedly until she eventually, and for one full year, achieves the status of senior briefer to the governor, which is a position where she's spending a lot of time alone with them and in the same room with them, talking to him face to face, probably every day, but at least multiple times. What were you thinking? Of course, he was thinking that he wants to fuck her. The only question is, to what extent was he at peace with this? Like, was he aware of it and detached from it? And to what extent was he suppressing this? Was he having this job interview? He's like, yeah, you're really good at policy analysis. What's this? Something tugging at his Catholic repressed soul. Oh, I really feel this young woman is going to bring just what we need into the office in terms of her energy and verve and tenacity and her insight into the political issues of our day. Her, as health advisor, she's really been going gangbusters. Health policy. Let's do. What can we promote her to? What's her? I only see her once a week as the head of health policy. What can we do? What other positions are a little bit higher up the ladder? Or young Miss Charlotte Bennett. Part of the problem with human nature is that people want to go back to slavery. Okay, they don't think they do, but really they do. Okay, like that's what people want. Like Andrew Cuomo didn't want somebody like me in the room with him. And let's be real. So we're talking about 2019 through 2021. Okay. The single greatest talent pool of men who really have the acumen and experience to do this job, this type of research analysis and briefing, are ex-military. They're either going to be ex-military or ex-FBI or like both. Those are the dudes with that kind of background who can do that kind of job. And they're scary dudes. And a lot of them are ugly. And a lot of them are fat and they're not vegan. And and those are dudes, and they'll come in and say, yep, I did research and analysis and briefing. Maybe they did it. Maybe they did this job for the State Department, maybe for the CIA, maybe for the FBI. But there were a lot of positions like that in the military. I'll come back to that in just a sec. You'll see why in a moment. Okay, in the United States, there are lots of people with a background that'll help them, but those are really dudes. And you know what? You know what you wanted, Andrew? You wanted someone who was mousy and meek and wouldn't talk back to you, not even when you sexually harassed her, right? Not even when you had these kind of creepy conversations that have been reported. That's what you got. Just watching the interviews with this young woman, you can tell she does not have what it takes to stand up to this guy and put him in his place, which is exactly what you need your senior briefer and research and analysis people to do. You got a mousy, meek, woefully underqualified person to do this job instead of, I mean, again, imagine if it's someone who used to work at the NSA, National Security Agency, or used to do this kind of job for State Department, any branch of the military, Air Force. Air Force has a lot of these guys. Sorry, in case you can't imagine, I could talk about all the different kinds of data you have to bring together for the Air Force and say, like, okay, well, when you look at the maps, these are the issues related to artillery placements, and these are the relations related to where the civilians are. And you bring together a whole lot of information and do a briefing, and it includes political information, includes anthropological information, frankly. I just say there are a lot of guys doing this kind of research analysis and briefing in a military background. And he didn't want that. The only job I ever applied for this way is a funny story. So it was doing research, analysis, and briefing. And they specified to me, so it really is not so different a job. It was doing research. Sorry, they specified for me that's like, look, you can do all this research, but ultimately it's got to be like a 5-minute, you write 2 paragraphs, present it in 5 minutes, and that's it. And then there's maybe some Q&A. Like, no matter how complicated the situation is, your synopsis has to be the same length, right? Like, well, it's a real complicated situation. I did a job interview for a position like that for the Canadian Navy. So the Canadian military, but specifically for a naval base here. And, the guys who interviewed me, they were real bros. They were real manly men, let me tell you. And I remember they specified, they said, the job is actually on a base. So it's a lot of guys, it's a lot of male energy in the room, you can handle that. Yeah. Anyway, I go in and do this interview, and really for that particular, I was really overqualified for the job. In terms of, I know I don't specifically do naval intelligence, but it was funny. I'd done a lot of reading at that time. I'd done a lot of reading relevant to that job. So they asked me questions that I think other like recent university graduates would not be able to answer. Like, okay, so tell me about a current military conflict that has naval dimensions related to international shipping and, surveillance and boats coming in and out and, this kind of thing. I was like, oh, okay, sure. And like off the top of my head, I was naming specific islands that are contested off the coast of Japan and how that involves China and North Korea and the Japanese Navy and Taiwan and stuff. I was able to, off the top of my head, do a briefing and answer questions and talk about these kinds of, oh yeah, sure, no problem, bro. At that time, it's because I'd been doing Asian studies and I switched from Chinese to Japanese and doing a lot of Japanese politics. So, I really at that time I had a lot of stuff off the top of my head. I was certainly able to do that job. Probably it's for the best I didn't get the job, to be honest with you. Anyway, so I do this whole thing, and like I can totally imagine for anyone else, these would really be questions that would stump you. You're sitting there going, well, okay, boats, the Navy, It's like, okay, so this is it. So the job is you take a complex situation, you do an analysis and a synopsis, and okay. I get up and leave the room after doing this interview, and I can see the girl sitting there who's the next one to go in on the schedule for this job. And she is one of the most attractive women I have ever seen in my life. And she is wearing the stereotype Fox News broadcaster attitude. She is wearing, attire that is mysteriously appropriate for a job interview while being completely pornographic and revealing. You're wearing this, incredibly, revealing, outfit. She might as well be dressed up to be a cocktail waitress. And it's even more striking because I remember she was so nervous. I came out the door and she looked up at me and, she's kind of quivering. This eye contact and stuff, she's wearing this short skirt and everything. You're seeing the whole thing quiver. I thought, she's going to get the job. These guys had just told me, I wouldn't say they complained to me, but they told me, they're cooped up on this military base. It's a lot of guys, it's that. I thought, this is in some ways an unfair competition, and probably they are going to hire this young woman instead. I did not get the job. I never asked who did get the job. There are innumerable jobs in life that people are hired for on the basis of, their appearance, and they shouldn't be. Okay, it's bad and evil and wrong. Sexual harassment is bad, evil, and wrong. Of course, rape is bad, and evil, and wrong. But there's a deeper, broader, more important kind of evil here that I'm talking about, right? Which is people being hired inappropriately in the first place, because of their appearance. And where for the employer and for the coworkers, you know what I mean? Like, this is a big part of their day, every day. Even if they don't harass the person, like even if they don't actually try to sleep with the person, where every day, I have to get dressed up, I have to look my best, I have to, even if they don't flirt, I have to talk to this person. Where like the politics of the workplace and the lived experience of being in the workplace, every day it's, electrified by these suppressed or scarcely suppressed sexual desires. And Andrew Cuomo is not the only one. I don't know how many other people in that office. And, the women compete with the other women for who's going to be more attractive and more powerful, assuming the women are heterosexual. If the women are bisexual or homosexual, there's yet more permutations and combinations. And there are men competing with the men for who's best looking or who's most dominant or who is most admired by the women or who's flirting with who's going to lunch with who, whatever. It's awful. And like, I really think it seems to me like nobody in my generation is willing to really think through what it means to have a desexualized workplace where you say, look, okay, guys, this is the 21st century. We have sexual freedom. We have sexual liberty, not at work. Okay. And this may seem like an unusual, comparison, but I know, it's in some ways this is deeply hypocritical. But I know that Walt Disneyland, they actually have and enforce no kissing rules, and you're not allowed to wear a sexy outfit at Disneyland. Now I know there you can add here a bunch of ironies, like, oh, okay, well, what about the women they have dressed up as Pocahontas, and what about the okay, there are all kinds of hypocrisies. Disney is not. But I know, Disney, they have people who come over and approach you if you and your girlfriend are sitting and you start kissing heavily on a park bench. I don't think I think if you peck someone on the cheek, they're probably not going to complain. But you can imagine people go there. People go for their honeymoon. People go on dates. People go as a romantic day out or night out or something. And they come and say, look, sorry, this is a family park. This is, you can't do this. Oh, yeah. Yes. Sure. Right. I've seen it at the swimming pool. I've seen people in bathing suits making out, in a public swimming pool. You know what I mean? You're like, right? This is a spectacle. Yeah. So look, Melissa was saying she's seen the same thing at hotel swimming pools. Yeah. So, I'm not saying it's easy. Like I'm not saying it's automatic, and I'm not saying the kind of, I'm not vilifying the sort of evils on the other side of it. But like, let's get real and let's really be responsible and let's really make those decisions that work. And sorry, like, honestly, I could talk about this all day, but like, okay. Part of what I'm saying is that society is unnaturally biased against ugly people, which we all know. Nobody's going to dispute that with me. Nobody's going to say, hey, you know what? I'm ugly and everything's going just fine. Our society is massively biased against ugly people. And that particular example I gave of a job interview I did, I think the fact that I am an ugly man was, it's very much biased things against me. By the way, Melissa had the experience of doing job interviews when she was considered incredibly beautiful. And then later, when she had an acne outbreak, if you guys don't know, there's a whole story with her getting acne treatment, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, at one point she had clear skin. And there's another point where she did job interviews where she had all this acne on her face. She could tell the difference. Just so you know, the difference was not subtle. And that's a rare case where you can, without putting on a costume, you can see how different your life is if you're considered ugly or beautiful. Anyway, yeah. But look, okay, so part of what I'm saying is about the way in which the whole of society is prejudiced against ugly people. And Andrew Cuomo should have been hiring ugly people, regardless of their gender, people who were really qualified and reliable to do these jobs, and also people who would really be on his side when the going got tough, because none of them were. And now it's ruined his career. There's more than one quality to be hiring for here. Okay. But isn't there also an interesting sense in which we're talking about society being prejudiced against the beautiful? And where like all they can be is beautiful and they're perceived as beautiful first and foremost, if not exclusively, right? So I gave an example of a friend of mine who she's incredibly beautiful, but she talks to me about studying Chinese and that's it. There's nothing flirtatious in the relationship with me. It's just business. Okay. Now, what if I don't do that? And what if her own, now this is very real. I have, in the past, I had friends from Italy. I currently don't have any Italian friends. I remember I had friends from Italy and they were like, dude, you don't know what it's like to be good looking in a university in Italy. Just like, like the level, like where you're sexualized, at the university campus every day. And then this is all it is, like you're better off being ugly than good looking on a university campus in Italy. So, I mean, what if how she relates to her coworkers, how she relates to her boss, how she relates to her professors throughout life, what if everything all the time is being warped and skewed by the fact that she's beautiful? Isn't that awful and oppressive in a way too? Like, can't we all just put on our dungarees and study Chinese together or study politics together or do this job or do research for fucking military policy? I mean, sorry, but if anything should be desexualized, can't we all come together and work as bank tellers in this bank without acting like we're seducing somebody? And that's the reality. Is this is like workplace seduction. And I know in Andrew Cuomo's case, people look at it as if the problem is one guy trying to seduce one woman. My hypothesis is the opposite, is that culturally we set up these workplaces where everyone is trying to seduce everyone, where there's this sexually competitive atmosphere and everyone's trying to be the prettiest and the most important and the best. And we have to make a conscious, intentional decision to desexualize the workplace. Like, you have to make a statement and say, no, my secretary is not supposed to be beautiful. She's supposed to be a secretary, or hire a man. I don't care. But like, no, like I don't choose my surgeon at the hospital based on how attractive they are. I don't want any of these institutions to be about how good looking people are. And I don't want people to live with that strain of trying to look good at the office. I want to take all of that out. I want all of you to just wear dungarees. You know what I mean? Now, again, the exceptions prove the rule. Okay, you work at a gym. You're a personal trainer at a gym. Fine. I totally get it, right? Because your job has to do with athleticism and showing how good your body. I agree. But my point is the bank is not a gym. Andrew Cuomo's office is not a gym. Government offices, the military, like any like, okay, but 99% of workplaces are not the gym. Okay. You have a showroom for jewelry. You have a high-end jewelry store with a showroom. Okay, I get it. So you want not just beautiful women, probably beautiful men too. You want good-looking men, and they want to dress a certain way and show off the necklaces and the watches. Oh, pardon me. Okay, so this is about selling gold jewelry or diamond jewelry or whatever you do. Okay, like there are a tiny percentage of workplaces that are exceptions. But look, I got to tell you something. There's so much left-wing bullshit about feminism. All right? When I go to a restaurant to order food, I do not want a good-looking waitress to flirt with me. I don't want an ugly waitress to flirt with me. I don't want to look at a waitress in a short skirt and a tight clothes that are showing off her breasts or whatever. Is this about food or is this about sex? Like, period. And it's like, sorry, and it's not just that I don't want it. I don't want my whole society to be like that, right? You know where I feel comfortable? Chipotle. You know what I mean? Like, where I feel comfortable? Like, and I know, I don't even think this is feminist. I think this is just fucking rational. I think this is fucking universal. Okay? If I go to Chipotle to buy food, I'm not here to flirt with or try to seduce the woman behind the counter who's, taking a spoon and putting the beans in a bowl. And that's going to Chipotle is a lot like going to prison. Okay, it really is. There are no bars on the windows, but there's stainless steel. There's glass with chicken wire. There's someone saying, yeah, what do you want? Yeah. Yeah, it's vegan. Yeah, Chipotle. This is not a paid advertisement. You think it is, but it's not. But like there's an honesty to what's going on at Chipotle. Now, so I don't think I've ever told this story before on the internet. I know I told it to Melissa when we first came here to Victoria, because this story, it was burned into my head. So I'm a father. I never get to see my daughter because the French divorce system is what it is. But I have a daughter. I am a father, and I walked past a bar. This is now years ago, but it's a bar here in Victoria that still sometimes I walk past it. I think it's still there. Anyway, there's a bar, and like many bars in Victoria, we have many bars that do this. They have young women wearing impossibly revealing attire, serving drinks, waiting tables, working as waitresses, whatever you want to say, right? And I walked past this bar. So this was several years ago. I was actually a bit younger, and actually, another thing I was going to say, I was younger and more handsome. I think I was fatter than I am now. Actually, I think I was probably like 10 or 20 pounds fatter, even actually. So anyway, interesting. I was thinking I was younger and more handsome. Maybe I was younger and worse looking. Anyway, I was younger. I walked past this bar, and there's an old man. I think the old man was with his wife. Actually, there's an old man sitting at this table ordering whatever, beer and French fries. It's this kind of he's ordering whatever. And the waitress, who's wearing, it's a skirt that's as revealing as a bikini. It's the shortest skirt possible and a more or less skin tight top with the, loca thing. And there's this young woman taking his order, and she looks like she is 16. She could pass for 15. Like, this is a young woman. And in Canada, you can employ people who are under the drinking age to be employees in bars. Of course, maybe I'm wrong, and she's actually 17. This is just based on. But I looked at her, and I can remember what I was thinking and feeling. I wasn't feeling attracted. I thought that should be illegal. just all the time I look at things and I think to myself, that should be. Just looked at that. I thought, and I'm thinking about all the ways in which this job is going to fuck her up for the rest of her life, that she will never even be aware of until she's like 30, in all likelihood. I've only had a few female friends to talk to me about this. But just being real with you, this isn't something I'm talking about with a lot of female friends. Probably if I search my memory a bit, I can come up with some other. Yeah, you know what? Now I'm thinking about it, probably at least 5 of my female friends talking about this. Anyway, so I could list up some. I have talked to several of my female friends who worked as waitresses or as bartenders, when they were really young, when they were like 18 or something. And it's like, obviously each of them had a slightly different perspective. They're like, yeah, you know what? There's sexual exploitation involved. There's flirting involved. There is touching and patting involved. There's groping involved, whatever, but what makes it even worse is there's an ego trip, and you're proud and you're haughty, and you feel like you're suddenly hotter than all the other girls in your high school who you felt were more attractive than you. And you're making money. You're getting all this money and tip, for a young person. You're 16, 17, 18 or something. It's a lot of money. You're still living at home with your parents. You're not paying rent. All of a sudden you seem to have more money than you should do with. And, you simultaneously are experiencing being sexually powerful and sexually powerless, right? In some ways you're a pawn of male fantasies, and old drunk men, is what is it? Maybe they're with their wives. Maybe they're, okay, but then on the other hand, you feel like you have all this power, and you can ask the bouncer to kick somebody out. You can go tell the coworkers somebody's causing a problem or something. You can slap them, like the guy touches you, but then you get to slap him and stuff. And there's all these kind of games and excitement. And, some women never really reflect. I'm sure there are someone who say, oh yeah, and then it's fine. They got on with their life and that was it. But I have talked to female friends of mine who reflected yeah, then the way they treated their boyfriends and the way they treated all their friends and colleagues in their life, and the way that ego trip changed them and changed the way they perceive society and the way they perceive men and the way they perceive money, has a huge impact. Everything I've just said, obviously, if a young woman becomes a stripper at age 18, if a young woman becomes a porn star, I'm just saying this role of female bartender and cocktail waitress, which for some people starts at age 16. Okay, I'm walking down the street. This is an actual anecdote about a real thing, real life. And I look at this young woman in this incredibly, revealing attire. And I look at her and like, you know, I don't even know what my expression would be. Like, I imagine something like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, and I really am just thinking and feeling that should be illegal. And I'm thinking about the kind of knock-on repercussions for this young woman, how sad this is. And, you know, yeah, on some level, I'm thinking, what if my own daughter ends up in that situation? And I'm, you know, this is half a second, but to some extent, I'm thinking about conversations I've had with maybe these 5 different women in my life or whatever, you know, about this kind of thing. And maybe I've only talked to 4 of them at that time or something. But, you know, have this kind of response to it. I go past. So go downtown. I was there to do some errands. I think I went to the bank. I think I bought some kind of dry goods, probably bought dried tofu or some crap because I'm vegan. In case I haven't mentioned, I think I have mentioned it all video. There you go. First mention. If anyone in the crowd did not know I was vegan, shout out to you. And so I finished doing my errands. I turn around and I walk back past the same bar. Okay. And the girl sees me through the window. She recognizes me, like she saw me. The only time she saw me walk past, whatever it was, 15 minutes earlier, she waves at me, smiles, and she comes over trying to flirt with me and get my phone number. Andrew Cuomo resigned, ladies and gentlemen. That's the end of Andrew Cuomo's career. Okay, guys, I will look at the questions and comments from the audience, and then I'm going to move on to the second totally unrelated issue, which is a question sent in via Patreon. You can support the channel on patreon.com for $1 a month. I think I currently recommend $3 a month. At least in Canadian dollars. $1 Canadian is really not worth very much these days. So somebody asks, somebody says, shout out to my girl, Melissa. That was Nacho, also known as Nachette. Nacho, who is in fact female. Wicked Energy says, didn't Jordan Peterson try to bring up these points, ? And got heavy criticism? I have so much in common with Jordan Peterson. Can you get me the book, babe? Do you know where it is? I have no clue. Okay. Oh, there you go. There you go. It's on the bullshit shelf. We have a very strict system of organizing our bookshelves, and one of the bookshelves is labeled bullshit. And there you go. Jordan Peterson, Beyond Order. Now, you tell me. I was thinking I would do a Kickstarter page. It would have to be GoFundMe. It'd be one of these donation pages. There you go. Beyond Order. I was going to do a fundraiser where I say, hey, pay me $100 to read Jordan Peterson's book. I don't feel I should have to read this crap without getting paid. Look, it's a terrible book. I could do a book review right now. Just be real with you. It's a terrible book. Jordan Peterson drinks water and breathes air. He can't be wrong about everything. For real, like a significant. Whoa, camera's out of focus. The camera's offended. The internet's offended. I'm insulting Jordan Peterson here. It's not possible for him to be wrong about everything. And a significant part of this book is just like stupid, pointless, folksy anecdotes where he's like, one time my grandfather was out on a date with my grandmother, and he said to her, like, it's just like quote wisdom unquote on this level of like some crap your high school gym coach could have told you. You know what I mean? Like, that is really it. So I as bad and evil and wrong as Jordan Peterson might be, I must have something in common. And you guys know he's come to my YouTube channel before. So we know Jordan Peterson and his daughter both have visited it. It's possible I've been more of an influence on their lives than we'll ever know. But I doubt it. Okay, so somebody else asks, it's awful, but isn't it part of the human condition, given that the workplace is a modern version of a chimp troop? I think you've got to make tough decisions under this heading. What is a limitation for some you cannot allow to be a limitation for all? This is going to seem like a really weird example. I saw an Amazon review. So the website Amazon that sells merchandise. Amazon review of a chess set. I was thinking about buying my daughter a chess set. It's not worth going to get. And this person complained that if you were colorblind, you couldn't tell the color of the chess pieces apart with this particular chess set. this can't be red, green colorblindness. This must be people who are totally colorblind. I think some of the pieces, they're kind of maroon purple or something. And like, yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if it had to do with the red or the purple or what the issue was. I remember just reading this thinking like, do you really expect the whole world to redesign and reform itself for those of us who are colorblind? And you know what this person said also? This is a very human detail. They said they took twist ties, so little pieces of plastic, and they put twist ties around half of the pieces so that a colorblind person could tell the two sides apart. Good for you. I am happy for you. Colorblind people cannot use this chess set. You know who else can't use this chess set? Blind people. If you're blind, you can't tell the difference between black and white at all. Like, what is a limitation for some of us? We can't redesign society to be a limitation for all. I think there are some people, and their combination, their sex drive and their intellect and their self-discipline and their detachment, they can't cope. And currently, we don't really have a way to we don't have terms to really kind of medicalize that or diagnose it. We talk about people being diagnosed as sex addicts, basically, but it's not really addiction, is it? I mean, what we're talking about here is a lack of self-discipline and separating, your sex life from your professional life, your intellectual life from your emotional life, like having that kind of discipline. I don't know what percentage of people have that problem, but it's a minority. It really is. There's a small minority of people who can't turn it off and can't treat their other human beings with the respect they deserve, and let's say also with the disrespect they deserve. Like, because workplace can involve confrontation and competition, it can involve disrespecting people. Okay, there's a small minority of people who have that problem. I refuse to reorganize the workplace to suit that lowest common denominator. I just don't think it's when you go to a dentist's office, do you think the receptionist should be this kind of this kind of sex symbol wearing revealing attire and so on? I'm just being with you. I don't. Like, it's not just that I regard that as neutral or indifferent. I see this as a really serious sort of corruption of society where all kinds of workplaces are made to resemble a nightclub, where all kinds of jobs are made to resemble the cocktail waitress, the sort of sexualized, or again, the personal trainer at the gym. There's some of these positions that are sexualized, or a lingerie model or a jewelry model. It's like, no, like this should be about dentistry, guys. This should be about health. I really, really can't accept it. So, that's my moral position on it. And I would just point out my position is not considered feminist. I mean, I think it's not acceptable on the left or the right or by any ideology right now. I stand as a nihilistic outsider. But no, I refuse to kind of lower my standards. And what I'm saying here, okay, so like I'm cool with chess sets that oppress colorblind people. Like, that's what we're saying. Like, okay, if you're colorblind, maybe you got to get out some nail polish, that's a significantly different, or it's shiny or something. You can get nail polish that's like silver or something. Maybe you got to modify the chess pieces because you're colorblind and nobody else has this problem but you. You can't see the difference between the chess pieces. Like, I get it. It's a real disability. But like, okay, I mean, some people are like Andrew Cuomo, And, what are we going to say? Are we going to try to set the standard and say, no, Andrew Cuomo, if you want to be in politics, this is what you have to live up to? Or are we going to set the standard the other way and say, this is what we're all going to live down to? The reality is, in 2021, that's what everyone's saying. Do you guys remember a TV show called Ally McBeal? Anyone else remember? That's what happened to the whole fucking world. What is it? 20 years ago, we watched Ally McBeal, and it fucking corrupted our whole goddamn society. Ally McBeal, year. Just going to Google this. What year was that? 1997 to 2002 was Ally McBeal. Jesus, terrible TV show. If you don't know it, just going to add this here for you. So, shows like Ally McBeal at that time were presented as if they were feminist because they were showing women in, important positions as lawyers wearing sexy power suits. Some of them were lawyers. Some of them were judges. Some of them were district attorneys and so on. But it was showing this hyper-sexualized, flirtatious workplace, this kind of competitive. I'm just saying, I think that a lot of TV shows, oh man, I wouldn't want to start to count how many TV shows, I don't watch mainstream American television, but I mean that kind of portrayal of the workplace. Yeah. Anyway, I think yeah. Yes. Oh, House MD. Sorry, I don't know that many TV shows. House MD. That was really like that. Definitely. Maybe not in the very first season or something, but House MD really got into that. Sexy female doctors showing up. They had several sexy male doctors too, to be fair. And this is meaningful eye contact with people at the office and all that stuff. Yeah. So just say this as a whole. All right, we got some more complaints about Andrew Cuomo here that I'm gonna we're gonna skip over. Okay, so totally good critique from the audience. Someone who uses the name "Don't you want to give me a kiss?" Ironically enough, stop sexualizing my comment section on YouTube. Says, doesn't the dungaree dress code for everyone just move sexual signals? Consider societies with burqas showing a bit of form. Okay, no. All right, it's totally good objection. No. Why? Because you're just defining the workplace. So look, guys, you can say I'm guilty of this myself. I go to university wearing my gym clothes. And in the old days, used to because I was going to the gym immediately before or immediately after going to university or both. I go to university in my gym clothes. A lot of young women go to university in their gym clothes. Here where I live, people wear skin tight Under Armour. Do you guys know the brand Under Armour? Oh God, what's the other one? Lululemon. So Lycra, spandex. I do not wear Lycra and spandex. But okay, what is the power and what is the point of saying, look, when you come to the classroom, don't wear gym clothes, wear study clothes. Okay, there is a point. And the night. I'm not saying close down all the nightclubs. I'm saying the nightclubs are nightclubs. I'm not saying close down the strip clubs. I'm not saying ban pornography. Sex is one thing, and the office is another. That's what I'm saying. Dentistry. The dentist's office should not look like a nightclub. That is what I'm saying. So no, but look, okay, there are a lot of levels to this, but I understand for a lot of people, to be honest, I'm remembering this more being women than men I've known in my life. I have known a lot of women who really told me that what they wanted was a man with a certain intellectual character and certain interests in common, and they meet those people at work, right? Like if you want a man who's kind of hardworking and sober and shares your interests. Okay, so I used to work in the humanitarian sector in Cambodia. So if you're a woman and you start going into that sector, you meet guys who have those interests in common with you, and whether it's being a lawyer or being into those, like I see how from the woman's perspective, like, oh, these are exactly the kind of people you wanted to meet, your whole life. Okay, but guess what? It's bad and evil and wrong. I had one friend. This only happened once. At one friend, it was a female professor. I know I mentioned this on YouTube a million years ago. She was a female professor, and she started talking to me about her plan, her intention to seduce a male student. I forget how old the male student was. He was over 21, though. I mean, he wasn't 19 or something. He was over 21. And I was like, look, I've made YouTube videos talking about this. I can send you those links. I forget if I did send the links or not. It's like, look, like if you expect me to be sympathetic or cheer you on or say like, you go girl, you're talking to the wrong guy. Like, here's what I've got to tell you is when you took that job, you made a vow. You gave your word. You took an oath. All right. And if it were anyone other than you, if you were evaluating, and by the way, she's a good looking woman. If you were evaluating a fat, ugly, older man in the same position you're in, and he was going to do what you're going to do with a good looking young woman, what would your opinion be? I'm sorry, but you're a fucking hypocrite. Like this excuse you're making for yourself, which may be because she feels she's a good looking woman. She feels she's entitled. She feels that, she feels that she isn't dragging this guy down to her level, but she's lifting him up to her level. Saying, I know. I mean, all these things go on in the human mind. Oh, well, it's okay for me because I'm hot. Yeah, right. But no, I really told her, I wasn't cruel. I was like, and I remember she didn't respond on that. She didn't. I was like, well, okay, if you didn't believe in it, like, why did you take the vow? And why do you expect other people to take the vow and live by that vow? Because you're all your colleagues and your boss, you expect your like higher level professors, like the head of the department, or you expect him to not do this to you. Like you think that's a firing offense if he does it to you, and you don't think it's a firing offense if you do it to someone else. Anyway, so she kind of responded with silence. And I forget if it was a couple weeks later or a couple months later, but she wrote back and thanked me. She said, look, you're right. So I don't know what happened. Maybe she slept with him first and then she sent me that man. I don't know. But it seemed like the advice made an impact with her. She didn't want to hear it. She thought about it. And then she wrote to me and said, she said that you're right. But, obviously in her situation, this was a younger man who had some common intellectual interest, research interest. She had the kind of characteristics, she was looking for. But, what if you are a plastic surgeon and, the type of women you're really attracted to are, skinny starlets in Hollywood with fake breasts, and your whole business practice is taking skinny athletic women in Hollywood who are trying to get ahead in their careers, and you help them by giving them plastic surgery, give them fake breasts. Either you can recognize the problem with this or you can't, What if you're a police officer and you're really attracted to women who happen to be drug addicted prostitutes? Comes up all the time. All the time. Oh yeah. Sorry, I read about it all the time. Very often it'll be a police officer who met the women while doing undercover work, and he starts using them as quote unquote informants, to try to get to higher level drug dealers. These are women who to some extent on a small scale buy and sell and use drugs, and they're prostitutes. And he starts sleeping with them and starts sleeping with their friends. The line between policing and pimping, gets blurred really quickly. No, so if it's wrong, it's wrong. All right. Frida comments that sometimes it's not because the person is very attractive, but it's because they're the most reachable person. So here's a shocking opinion. Frida says, I didn't say this. Frida says Monica Lewinsky wasn't very attractive, but she was working there. I think there is both more and less to the story of Monica Lewinsky and why and how that happened. I will say, sorry, I know I've mentioned this at some point on YouTube before. Back when I was at Cambridge University, England, the sexual transgressions were just endemic in that environment. It's mind-blowing. But, people with PhDs sleeping with PhD candidates, professors sleeping with students, like graduate students sleeping with undergraduate students that they're tutoring, and of course, and men cheating on their wives, and professors sleeping with their secretaries, like department secretaries, having sex with the professors, and the professors were almost always married before they had these affairs. That stuff was rampant. And, I don't think that's the case with Monica Lewinsky. I think the Monica Lewinsky story is something different. But this question of, is it just laziness and proximity that results in these things? Well, again, what excuse are you going to make for people? So this police officer, his whole job is hanging around drug addicted prostitutes. I'm sorry, but you got to hold yourself to a higher standard. You got to, you have to suffer in your turn. What can I tell you? So, being a man, being a woman, being an adult means that you are committed to doing the right thing just because it's the right thing to do. Not that you're committed to doing the right thing when you would enjoy it. Not that you're committed to doing the wrong thing when you would enjoy it. Okay. Not that you're committed to your own personal happiness or your personal convenience. It's you're committed to doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And we expect it of the police officer, and we expect it of the university professor, and we expect it of Governor Cuomo, and we expect it of lawyers. And that's why it's really corrupting to have a TV show like Ally McBeal or all these sexy medical doctor dramas. Sexualizing the workplace is a big problem that way. All right. Okay, so I'm trying to just catch up with your comments before I move on to the next topic here. So the Art of Life comments that he feels that sexuality is fundamentally irrational. So what? The desire to snort cocaine is irrational. So what? I just doesn't change the discourse we're engaged in here one iota. Like, if you think it's irrational rather than rational, so what? Like, anyway, sorry. People still have to make these decisions, and they still have to live with the consequences. So I'm sorry, but to me, something I said many years ago in discussing my own philosophy of nihilism, you really have to think about the relationship between words and things profoundly. And preferably, you should do it when you're a teenager, and then apply it, for the rest of your life. The difference between a plant and a weed, is up to me. Am I intentionally growing a garden of dandelions? Or are the dandelions weeds that have invaded and destroyed my garden? Okay. Dandelions are beautiful flowers. The beauty is in the eye of the beholder. What is more beautiful, a dandelion or a rose? It's completely subjective. You can decide you're growing roses and you want to exterminate the dandelions because they're ruining your rose garden. Dandelions have other reasons. You can make dandelion salad. You may not know this. You can make dandelion root into a variety of foodstuffs, including a substitute for coffee. Dandelion root coffee. It has no caffeine, but it has this nice coffee-like flavor. You can eat dandelion root. If you are intentionally farming dandelions, they are not a weed. So I just say, whether it is a plant or a weed, whether it is a beautiful flower or an ugly weed to be exterminated is entirely up to me. So, whether this is rational or irrational, this is just a subjective judgment, which is in most cases self-serving and dishonest. Yeah. Do you want to say something?
I was just going to say my grandfather made dandelion wine.
No kidding. Okay, so Melissa had a relative who made dandelion wine. So yeah, that's real Poe Buckler stuff, man. That's real frontier. Yeah. I mean, that's real. Came over on the Mayflower technology. Yeah. I don't know. I think only. Yeah. No, I think of dandelion wine as being those people who were really living on the frontier that way. Prove me wrong. I don't know who the hell else makes dandelion wine. I've been to Bordeaux. Ain't nobody drinking dandelion wine in Bordeaux, France. Anyway, yeah, there you go. Okay. Okay, Wicked Energy says, well, maybe I shouldn't repeat this. I don't know if it's true. Okay, Wicked Energy alleges that allegedly Jordan Peterson was accused of sexual harassment several times. Allegedly, sources say. I have no source in that. I've never. Do you think it's covered in this book? I think if I look at the index, sexual harassment allegations in there, I doubt it. All right. Okay, so again, I'm not offended. I'm happy to reply to this question. In some ways, I think it's not. It should have been asked earlier. So exe.exe says, so the Muslims are partially right about modesty, huh? LOL. But the issue is they believe it's mandated by God and it should have some punitive consequences if it's not followed. Okay. I am not saying the Muslims are right. I am not talking about modesty. I'm talking about work. All right, I'm talking about a job. So, like I said before, I'm not trying to ban pornography. I'm not trying to close down nightclubs or bars. If people dress in a sexy way for all shit. We were looking at a YouTube video from a skiing town, and it's cold in winter, and women are still like 90% naked. Women are out in this skiing town showing off their whole body. You can see every crack and crevice, and it's cold enough to go skiing. You know what I mean? Like, okay, you're on your ski vacation and you want to show it off and go, walking around, you know what I mean? It's one of these places where there's a nightclub adjacent to the ski lodge or whatever. Okay. I am not trying to shut down the human tendency to show off and sleep together and flirt. All right. I'm separating it from the workplace. I'm saying, you know what? That is a nightclub. And this is the office of the governor of New York State. Like whatever the office is you're talking about, whatever they're supposed to be saying, look, that's a nightclub. This is a dentist's office. That's a nightclub. This is a bank, whatever it is. So no, I'm not pro-Muslim in any way. And by the way, you notice I didn't say this about the customers at the bank. If you're a woman and you're wearing sexy clothes because you're going to the gym or because you're going to the nightclub or because you're going skiing, if you're a woman wearing sexy clothes, you can go into the bank dressed that way. I'm saying the employees of the bank shouldn't dress that way. And I think, if you are a good-looking woman wearing revealing attire, you will get a certain kind of attention at the bank. And if you want that, or if you can tolerate that, that's up to you. So no, I don't agree with the Muslims at all. For me, this is just a separation of genres. I just mentioned under this heading, I've told the same to Melissa, but I think I've never said it on YouTube. One of the interesting things is, shut it from the audience. Somebody says that undisclosed sources say that dandelion wine is fantastic. But anyway, I once told this to Melissa that, in the history of Sanskrit poetry, this is the #1 channel for off-topic references to the history of Sanskrit poetry. Find another YouTube video about Andrew Cuomo that mentions Sanskrit poetry. But, in Sanskrit, their idea of censorship was not that erotic and horrifying texts shouldn't exist. Their attitude was not that erotic poetry should be suppressed or destroyed, but that it had to be separated into genres, that it wasn't acceptable, for example, to mix the erotic with the tragic, that it wasn't acceptable to mix the erotic with the comedic, or to mix the erotic with the sacred, that like a sacred text shouldn't have this. And it came up. So there was an example of a text that was, in some sense, censored or discussed as an example of being censored, where in a tragic scene, a man has been cut down in battle. So a big part of ancient, you see this in the Buddhist writings too, in Pali, you see this in Buddhism and Hinduism, is the shock and horror that the high quality steel blades at the time can really cut a human body apart. You can just be cut into small pieces, remarkably quickly. So, I think this is as compared to a more primitive time when metal implements were not so impressive. But anyway, you see quite a lot of this in ancient literatures, the shock and astonishment at seeing a human body reduced to several pieces, with a few rapid movements of a blade in the hands of an expert, experienced warrior. But anyway, so this guy loses the battle, and both of his hands have been lopped off, and I think his body has been chopped into other pieces. So I just mentioned that's in real medieval battles, that's relatively common. You can imagine that, if someone else is holding a sword, that you cut their hand off, with the sword as part of winning the battle. Anyway, the man's widow, so his wife, runs over weeping and picks up his disembodied hands that are still bleeding and have just fallen from his corpse, picks up his hands and weepingly says, "These are the hands that once caressed my full round breast." She gives this erotic, it's poetry. She gives this poetic monologue about the romance she had with this man and how heartbroken she is. So this is an example of, you're mixing the genres. So just mention, the idea that things should be separated, that tragedy should not be pornography, that's different from believing that pornography should not exist and saying I want to separate human sexuality from this kind of workplace. That is not the same. So no, I do not feel I have anything in common with the Muslim side of the equation. And I have made some YouTube videos. Okay. Melissa's going to jump in. You want to stand up just to get more?
Sure.
Get more.
So this is something that I think you mentioned not too long ago. We were out together. You were talking about if you take politics seriously, why don't you have a dress code as serious as you would have in a laboratory or that you would have on a construction site?
Smart kid, huh? She's 28. I have to stop calling her kid. My old lady. She's smart. She's smart, my old lady. No, she knows what she's talking about, my old lady. Yeah. Babe, that's a great way to put it. So Melissa just said, if you're taking life seriously, if you're taking politics seriously, why wouldn't you have a dress code as serious as a laboratory? It's just a great comparison. Like, look, guys, this is a laboratory. This is serious. I don't give a fuck if you want to show off your jewelry and you want to show off how sexy you are, how athletic your body is. Sorry, but this is not the place to be showing off or trying to look sexy. This is a lab, so you got to wear a lab coat. Or sometimes it's not even a lab coat. Sometimes it's coveralls. Laboratory have to wear white zip-up coveralls. That's what it's about, guys. So great call, babe. Yeah, no, I think that's better than what I was saying. I think that's more to the point, And look, in saying that we should take politics seriously and we should take the workplace seriously, you can take sexuality seriously too. If by all means, you can put just as much work into your sex life as you do into your professional life. I'm just saying they shouldn't be one of the same thing. And if you don't believe me, take a good fucking look at Andrew Cuomo. Holy shit. Think about the sex life that guy could have had. Think about if he just could get it, if he could just have the detachment and self-discipline. When he was hiring someone for that position as senior researcher and briefer, he could have hired the best person in the United States of America, or at least in the best person in New York State. He could have had a wonderful, highly qualified, experienced, tough, honest person in that job, and someone who would have backed him up to this day when the allegations came. And if he wanted to, he could have had an amazing sex life. He was handsome and rich and famous and beloved by the public. Think about the sex life he could have had. The one thing he couldn't do is sexually harass his 23-year-old employee who was a graduate majored in women's studies. She was the head of the special task force at her university for sexual trauma. So I can look this up. I'm sorry. She was the head of the sexual misconduct and assault reform task force at her university. This is who she is. You can't try to sleep with her. The one person in all of your, and here's the other thing. I said this to Melissa in a walk. If he had met this young woman at the job interview, if he had met her and he really fell in love, which we all know didn't happen, but if he met this young woman and fell in love, he should have not hired her. He should have hired the right person for the job based on their qualifications. And then he could have, on his own time, got in touch with her, probably by Twitter or by Instagram. He could have sent her a message and said, hey, I met you at the job interview. I'd love to meet up and get lunch sometime. Okay. And guess what? There's a risk there. You're taking a risk meeting up with someone like that and could still ruin your life. But sure, if he actually wanted to have an affair of this kind, I don't know, he could have gotten married. I don't give, he could have, whatever, could have been the love of his life. For all I know, he's lying to us and he felt he was deeply in love with this young woman, or all of them. Maybe he was in love with all 6 women. I don't know. I don't know how he swings. But if you're really going to do that, it has to be outside of the workplace. Absolutely has to be non-negotiable. All right. Okay, guys. So we're now moving on. That was enjoyable. Thank you all for your comments. You all contributed a lot. If you guys want to hit the thumbs up, it helps more people join the crowd. If you guys want to share the link, share it to your Facebook friend group or what else you got these days? Share it on Tumblr. I'm a boomer. I remember when Tumblr was a big website. When was that? Back in 2014. Tumblr was what all the kids were into. But anyway, yeah, if you guys want to share the link somewhere, people can join the crowd. But yeah, so that to me, that added, hope it added some entertainment value for you. I admit the video would be half as long if I didn't do Q&A with the audience, but hey, spice of life. All right, so I got a message from a supporter on Patreon. I'm just going to use his first name, which is apparently Ivan. All right, so Ivan writes into me. He says, hi, Eisel. In the last 2 discussions, you have presented why you would want to end culture and religion over a long period of time. Now, I am not complaining, but that is obviously an attempt to summarize a pretty complex argument that occupies like maybe 3 hours of videotape. It's a little simplistic to say I want to end culture, but I talk really openly and really honestly about the extent to which innovation and improvement in culture is also going to involve demolition of culture. It's going to involve really challenging and changing and destroying a lot of our assumptions in the past. Things that we think are sacred today will have to be destroyed. So let's keep it real. But no, I would not state my own position as just being the end of culture. It's a charming phrase, but I've not said that. When I was asked to summarize my view, I coined the term cultural nihilism. So maybe we could call this part of the video discussion of cultural nihilism. And to my knowledge, nobody else has used that term. I have a lot of weird. I was searching the other day. Melissa made a video, which I titled. I want credit for the title. I titled it "The Vagina Trap," and you learn nobody's ever made a YouTube video called "The Vagina Trap." It's a great title. Nobody's used this. By the way, it's not a shallow video. You haven't seen it. It's a great video. Hey, it's Melissa speaking, but I influenced it in some ways. I made up the title in some ways. But anyway, all right. Continuing this comment from Ivan. In the last 2 discussions, you've talked about the negative role towards the demolition of culture in relation to the creation and progress of culture, or adaptation and change of culture. All right. Quote, however, there seems to be a duality in this meaning that confuses me. On one side, you present why culture is bad, and on the other side, recognize its value, taking note of opportunities that were lost as a result of the destruction of culture/people and its mismanagement. That's an interesting critique. I continue, quote, you yourself are a lifelong language learner. Just mention, I have completely stopped learning languages because I'm trying to finish this book. This is weird for me. This is a long period of not learning languages that's been created by writing this book for all you guys. I mean, ultimately, it is for my audience that I'm writing the book. It's been a lot of work finishing the book. But yeah, I assume really probably by August 15th or something, I should be back to studying Chinese. But it's been a shockingly long time that I have not been learning languages now. But yes, generally for most of my life, I'm a lifelong language learner. Anyway, you yourself are a lifelong language learner who has studied now obscure languages for humanitarian purposes and have been a scholar of Buddhism. Few people could be as invested in culture and a form of religion as you have. All right, I'm going to continue, but I think already you in the audience could probably argue against that. Probably just the average person who voted for Donald Trump is way more invested in religion than I am. It's pathetic, but it's true. All right. Continue. Quote, you speak of multiculturalism as lost opportunity, for example, for Canadian education in unexplored topics for history and politics. And furthermore, you lament the detachment of Canadian culture to its First Nations roots in comparison to what Mexico has. So a little bit of peculiar syntax and grammar there, but I think you know what he means. I continue, quote, there is this part of your message that sees value in culture and at the same time wants to destroy it. New paragraph. Quote, I just want to clarify the details of this vision. For instance, say there was a distant future where a significant isopolitical faction that represented a good 45% to 55% of the population dominates politics, where this dream of ending culture and religion is a generation away. How would it treat people who still belong to an old culture and a form of religion? Will some cultures be tolerated more than others, such as that as First Nations, like the Cree and Ojibwe? Ideally, how homogenous would society be? Do we still go to music festivals and take our kids to the cinema? Perhaps you mean to break old culture apart and replace it with a newer or more ethical one. Okay, so very interesting, very provocative question. It's good to know people who pay me $1 a month have what it takes to criticize me and cross-examine what I'm saying here. Now, I do think that his perspective is sort of based on a misunderstanding of what I'm saying, totally well-intentioned misunderstanding, but I do think he's partly misreading. So I'm going to have to answer this in several parcels. By the way, so guys, I can see your comments as they come in. If anyone wants to say anything, you can jump in anytime. The water is fine. Okay, so if you guys want to participate, I think many of the people in this audience are aware of my recent videos. You've seen one or the other part of them talking about multiculturalism. You might have related questions. You might agree with this guy. You might disagree. I'm happy to add you to the mix. Okay, the first parcel I'll deal with is the status of First Nations people in Canada. If you don't know, First Nations is a polite term for what used to be called American Indians, the indigenous people of the United States and Canada, people like the Cree, the Ojibwe, the Navajo, the Dene, the Inuit, the people who lived on this continent prior to the arrival of Christopher Columbus and then ensuing waves of genocidal, more or less genocidal European colonialism, and of course, the enslavement of Africans and bringing them over too. So that is what we mean by First Nations, right? Now, if someone were to ask the question, which he doesn't ask, he's sort of hinting at this question without asking. If you were to ask the question, why is Eisel Mazard sympathetic to the preservation of First Nations languages and culture, whereas he seems to be such a harsh critic of the culture of Saudi Arabia or even the Catholicism of Paris, France, as to say openly, look, guys, in the next century, this is something that has to be destroyed. Like, what's it going to be? Is it going to be 100 years, 500 years, 50 years? I asked that too. So I shouldn't have specified a century. I say in the future, this is something we really have to talk about, destroying Christianity, destroying Islam. And as I've repeatedly indicated, if you do it in 500 years, that's one thing. If you do it in 100 years, if you do it in 50 years, let's get serious. Let's really talk about the implications of overcoming our cultural traditions of Christianity. So someone could ask, well, why do I speak in such a different way about Cree culture and Ojibwe culture? And I'm not saying this to insult Ivan, who sent this in. Probably Ivan has never met or spoken to any Cree people or Ojibwe people or Mohawk people or Dene people and doesn't know anything about their actual culture and political situation. Like, probably, I'm not just given various things about this message and my prior messages to this person. Very, very few people have, right? It's just not something you can assume. Now, I don't think that prejudices what he's saying here, but it certainly shapes the way the question is posed. Okay, so Mexico in the year 2021, how much of a problem is human sacrifice by the indigenous people? How much a problem is the Catholic Church? Who has power in Mexico? What is the religion? What is the culture that has to be overcome? Is it the indigenous people's culture? No. And that is in large part because the indigenous people's culture already was destroyed by Catholicism. All right. Now, if you actually watch both of my long videos about multiculturalism, I did say at some length, I digress to say, look, if you think First Nations culture was utopian, was some kind of amazing, wonderful ideal, you don't know First Nations culture. But that's past tense. That's talking about what it was. What exists today is little more than a set of decorative motifs because their culture was destroyed partly by the Catholic Church, partly by the Anglican Church. There was more than one church involved. But in brief, it was destroyed by Christianity. Now, I mean, likewise, if we were talking about Afghanistan, it would be completely surreal to say, you know what the problem with Afghanistan is? The problem with Afghanistan is the influence of Buddhism on their culture. In the past, Afghanistan was a Buddhist country, right? That's not the reality today. The reality is the problem with Afghanistan is Islam, is Muslim culture. Now, I think, you guys may not, you may not have caught this in my earlier videos. They were very long. They covered many topics or many angles. So I'm not criticizing Ivan for failing to catch this, and I'm not criticizing you in the audience. But I did say, all right, I will say now, expanding on what I said briefly in the earlier video, I can imagine a parallel universe in which the Inca culture of Mexico, I mean, we could pick any of them, the Inca or the Olmec or what have you, but where the indigenous culture of Mexico continued uninterrupted by Christianity, and where today we really had to deal with it in this same kind of way, where I had to use the same kind of tough talk that I'm using, talking about the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris and saying, look, guys, what is the future of the Catholic religion in Paris? And what is the future of Islam in Saudi Arabia and in Afghanistan? Let's really get serious. Let's really face up to it. And of course, we have to look at the future of Christianity and Islam in Canada. All right. But it would be completely surreal today in this world to talk about the indigenous religion and culture of Mexico as if that is the problem, as if that's the barrier to be overcome. Now, again, I do have some personal experience with this as well as kind of on paper research experience. Okay. I will tell you a story about a particular First Nations person I knew whose life really was shaped by, traditional religious culture. Okay. So she was a very young girl. She was either 11 or 12 or 13, something like this. I'm sorry, I don't remember that year. Let's say she was 13. But you know what? I'm sorry. I really think she was more like 11. Now that I'm just remembering it more. Okay. So I got this story when she was a fully grown middle-aged woman. Okay. So let's say she's 11 years old and she has a dream. And the main image in her dream is of a buffalo. And there are a few other images. All right. And the other members of her tribe, like ultimately her parents listen to her about this dream, and they take her to see a more senior member of the tribe and some kind of medicine man or medicine woman, someone who's a kind of expert in the religion. And they interpret the symbols of this dream. And they're like, whoa, this is serious. Okay. Because this is one of the only places in the continent where the religion is this intact. Like from coast to coast, from north to south, in most places, the indigenous religion has been totally destroyed and replaced with Christianity. Really? Go to James Bay. The James Bay Cree are divided between hyper-Catholic and hyper-Protestant. The two hate each other. The Catholics and the Protestants, they're kind of at war with each other, where everyone's super Christian and hates each other, and there's no trace of the indigenous culture left, or very, very little. Okay, but she is living in one of the last places with this. So they take her to medicine man or spiritual leader of the tribe and talk about symbols and say, okay, well, here's what we got to do. We got to take a tent and we got to burn these special herbs. And she's got to fast, eat no food and drink no water and kind of dance in a circle where she's giving herself heat exhaustion while inhaling this smoke and smoking tobacco. By the way, I presume this is wild tobacco, but according to her anecdote, they use normal cigarettes too, processed tobacco, in order to induce hallucinations. And then, some spiritual thing will happen as a result. Okay. So, it is unbelievably rare. It is incredibly rare in the year 2021 that you will be talking about the indigenous religion having this kind of power and influence in people's lives and it having been overcome. I heard a really interesting, very brief, but very interesting interview with a Catholic priest who was out in remote northern Saskatchewan, where, he represented Christianity, obviously, and he was trying to encourage people to be good Christians. But he competed with spiritual leaders of this kind who are still practicing the Aboriginal tradition that involved interpretation of dreams and smoking tobacco and fasting and dancing and playing music while you're dancing and so on, to induce hallucinatory experiences and so on. And I remember it was just not what I was expecting to hear at all from this Catholic guy. The Catholic, he was indigenous, his own ancestry, his own DNA. He was not a white Catholic. He was an indigenous person who'd become a Catholic leader. And I remember he said, that he very bluntly, he said that he believes that the spiritual forces that are used by the other side are real, that he believes that when these people see demons or other visions, he believes that they're real. He believes they have real supernatural powers. And it's precisely for that reason he wants them to convert to Catholicism instead. Obviously, from my perspective, I'm expecting him to say like, Christian superstitions are real and the superstitions the other side are imaginary. It's like, no, he says, oh no, the spiritual forces used by the other side, those are real too. And that's exactly why it's so important not to dabble in them, not to dabble in black magic or witchcraft, So, look, I'm kind of conceding a point here, but the concession is minuscule, right? Could some people, and so the particular woman whose anecdote I just related, when she was a child having this experience, and there were other kind of bad things about this experience. Sure, in her case, you could engage in a kind of critique and say, look, this religious tradition, this is something, you can't do this to your own children. You can't do this to your grandchildren. I understand your parents and grandparents, they thought this was the right thing to do. But like, obviously, you now have to adopt some kind of skeptical attitude towards this. What is the role of this going to be in your life? Now, I have an answer for that question. My vision of human history is not that it's, either it dominates you or it doesn't exist. It is not, to use an overused phrase, a zero-sum game. Okay. My most commonly used example is about the literature of Shakespeare. People quote Shakespeare at weddings. People quote Shakespeare at funerals. Shakespeare's theater adds some meaning to their lives. Nobody worships Shakespeare. Nobody is celibate until marriage because of Shakespeare. Shakespeare is not dominating and oppressing people in their lives. It's just not the case. Okay. It is totally possible to take the literature of Buddhist philosophy and regard it like the poetry of William Shakespeare. It is totally possible to have the traditions. Frankly, it's the easiest way. It's the main way that definitely Cree and Ojibwe literature will now survive, if it can survive in the 21st century. You have stories about magical talking animals. You have a story about, the trickster god, or you have a story about the Wolverine. They have these different characters from mythology. Okay. Do you, I can ask you, again, if I actually knew this guy, Ivan, do you really think people are having their lives destroyed by reciting these stories about talking animals that happened, by the way, before humans existed on Earth? It's also an interesting part of the mythology. It's kind of like having an Adam and Eve story. It's set in this period prior to human history on the planet. when there were all these talking animals but no humans or something. Okay, so like what do you think the significance of this is going to be now and in the future, especially given the reality that these religions and cultures already have been destroyed by Christianity? Okay, so look, is there a positive role for culture in the future? Yes. Okay. But my answer to that, it's neither monoculture nor multiculturalism. Now, all right, I think this is meaningful enough. I should go, and nobody in the audience is complaining. Nobody's complaining that I'm going too deep on this, so I'm going to go, a little bit deeper. Okay. How do you know you like Shakespeare? What if you don't like Shakespeare? What if, where you grew up, Shakespeare was really the only play in town? It was really the only thing you could watch. What if you grew up in a subculture where you were constantly told that the plays of William Shakespeare are the most refined, erudite, important things, where they had this supreme cultural value, and that every refined and educated person should go to see a play by Shakespeare 3 or 4 times a year? And how can you fail to appreciate Shakespeare, where there was also guilt and shaming put on you by your culture, where it's like, oh, if you say Shakespeare is boring, oh, well, then you must be some kind of vulgarian. You must be you must be someone with absolutely no mental or emotional depth whatsoever. How can you fail to appreciate Romeo and Juliet? Right now, look, guys, I got people who watch this from all around the world. Some of you have grown up in a place where this was the attitude towards opera. Certain places in Italy, certain places in Austria, like there's an opera culture where within a particular town or city, oh, everyone has to appreciate the opera, where everyone has to appreciate ballet, or, again, depending where you are, it could be everyone has to appreciate Shakespeare. That is much less oppressive than the Catholic Church or Islam, especially Islam as it exists in Saudi Arabia. Okay. But, you can't really know how much or how little you appreciate Shakespeare if you don't have a choice. All right. You can only appreciate Shakespeare or critique and reject Shakespeare. You can appreciate it as much or as little as you do if you approach it, analyze it as a nihilist, and as a nihilist who has a lot of options. Okay. So, I've known indigenous people from different parts of the world. All right. I knew one indigenous guy from Hawaii. I knew his whole life story. I'm not going to kind of go into it. If you are born and raised in Hawaii and the only culture you have ever known are the legends and literature of Hawaiian native people, okay, that's one thing. And if you are from Hawaii and you have traveled the world and you've studied Buddhism and Hinduism and the literature of Europe over many centuries, and then you say, you know what? Having become a sophisticated worldly person who doesn't believe in any of this stuff, like I don't worship Shakespeare, I just know Shakespeare. I don't worship Cicero, but I know this literary heritage, whatever, You know what? There really is something special. There is something I appreciate about this literature of the indigenous people of Hawaii. That's something. All right. I don't think you're going to carry out human sacrifice for it. I don't think you're going to carry out horrible rituals like circumcision, for it. I don't think you're going to kill people over it. I don't think you're going to fight wars. These things can have, a status in your society, but it's important to really consider and really emphasize the extent to which we are totally robbing culture of all of its power. Not just the power to choose who you're going to marry, which we talked about, like arranged marriage. It's an unbelievably powerful thing for a church to have or cultural tradition to choose who you're going to marry and shape the rest of your life, or choose your career, or choose your education for you or something. Okay. But beyond that, I don't even think culture should bully you in this way, where you have to appreciate Shakespeare. Because if you don't appreciate Shakespeare, who are you? What kind of person are you? Right. And it's very easy for culture to take on this kind of oppressive role in our lives. And I do think, again, so I'm continuing to criticize my position. I do think there are some indigenous people, not many, but there are a few who still live in communities where there's that kind of pressure on them to appreciate their own heritage and to be beholden to their own heritage. And I have, I'm just being honest with you, I have met those people when they're rebelling against it. I have met those people when they're talking to me because they come up to me and they say that they are First Nations people, whether they're Cree or Ojibwe or Dene. They say, and that's exactly why they got interested in Buddhism. I remember in one case, that's why they went to Japan and got interested in Japanese culture and Japanese Buddhism. And they were really interested in challenging the kind of ignorance and assumptions of their parents. And of course, that'll take them to a more erudite position of, appreciation for it, whatever there is to be appreciated. It's possible they'll have that more cosmopolitan world. They'll come back from Japan. There was one I met who had been to Taiwan, actually. But, you can read Lord Shang and you can read Sun Tzu and you can read Confucius and you can read Buddhist philosophy and you can get familiar with Hinduism. And again, you can get familiar with the whole treasure trove of European philosophy and politics, as I've continued to do in the last several years. You can read Appian and Sallust and, and then you can see that culture and that literature and that tradition in some kind of comparative and analytical context. And I am suggesting that each and every one of us should, in effect, be a nihilist, right? So now, it may be, if you are listening to this, you may not see that as the demolition and destruction of culture, but really it is, right? Because I am talking about robbing culture of its power in that way. And then what happens? Then you're really empowering people to not only be a much more analytical audience for culture, but also to be much more dynamic and creative. And then, challenging and creating the next phase, whatever's going to happen next in culture. Okay. I'm just reading some of the more recent comments. Okay, I'm rereading this question here too. Okay, so I think there's another sort of deep question raised here. I could quote what he says exactly, but you guys probably remember it well enough. One of the things he's getting at, in effect, is it or is it not possible to say that some cultures are better than others? So that is not exactly how he words it, but he's saying, well, you talk about these negative aspects of multiculturalism, but on the other hand, you lament how the genocidal culture of the British Empire is worse than some other culture, right? Now, I think there's something profoundly wrong indicated by the question. I'm not criticizing. I think this person is writing with totally good intentions, and they're raising interesting, important points. But there's something really wrong there, because what you're saying to me, in effect, is how can you criticize culture while also saying that some cultures are better than others? And my reply is, what do you mean? How can you criticize culture without saying that some cultures are better than others? If you criticize movies, if you engage in the critique of cinema, it's completely inevitable and essential that you're going to say some movies are better than others. And your critique may include, there may be some criticism that applies to all movies or 99% of movies or 95% of movies. You may say, well, you know what? The Batman movie was really bad, and the Wonder Woman movie was bad, and the X-Men movie was bad, and the Star Wars movie was bad. And there are some ways in which all these movies are bad. They have some things in common that are bad. But then you turn around and ask the person, oh, well, but you seem to think some movies are better than others. Yeah, of course. Of course. And again, this just seems a little bit detached from the kind of real world examples that I've used to propel these questions. So I made a video earlier today in which I asked you, would you rather live in Iran or communist China? For most of us in this audience, it would be incredibly tough to live in Iran. The main reasons are cultural. Okay, now I could use any. Would you rather live in Saudi Arabia or Thailand? You may not know this. They have something in common. Politically, they're both monarchies. They're both kingdoms. So there's the kingdom of Saudi Arabia and there's the kingdom of Thailand. Well, they're profoundly different because of culture. And of course, I can choose. And of course, I can judge. There's no reason why I wouldn't be able to judge that some cultures are better than others. Okay. Then there's the next question. Why? Why are some cultures better than others? And the answer is, in effect, some cultures are more compatible with nihilism, whereas others suffocate it and snuff it out, make it impossible to be a nihilist, make it impossible to be a free thinker, right? And some cultures are open to and actively engaged in the critique of themselves, right? What do I love about American culture? There are things I love about American culture. I remember a rap lyric. My life is so fucked up, but I love it. You know, the whole genre of rap music is teeming, or it was. Okay, maybe rap music is dead. The rap music of the 1990s or something. Rap music I appreciated. It was teeming with this sense of discontent with the mediocrity of society and the mediocrity of life, and raging against, you know, what people's life had become. You know, it wasn't all from young people. It was going to say the kind of the rambunctious pessimism of youth, that there must be something better, and hating the neighborhood you grew up in, and hating the people at your school you grew up in, and hating the other members of your gang, and hating the rival gang members, and hating your teachers at school. And, you know, there's a lot of agony there in rap music. I mean, you know, American culture is constantly engaged in the examination of what's wrong with the United States of America. You know, the United States of America is constantly engaged in psychoanalyzing the American dream and evaluating the extent to which it's a nightmare. You know what I mean? So, of course, you know, there are things I really positively appreciate about American culture that is completely lacking from Saudi Arabian culture, that is completely lacking from Chinese communist culture. Let me tell you, the culture of communist China. This is not the attitude of Chinese communist culture. In any given year, if you look at kind of the list of hit movies in the United States, and even the list of hit songs, a lot of, and if you get into books, unfortunately, very few people read books. It's a much smaller market. But if you look at the hit books in America, many of them, whether fiction or nonfiction, this stuff is actively engaged in an examination of and recrimination about what's wrong with the United States of America. There are bestsellers, you know, year after year. And then they're also asking, I mean, I think, honestly, without exception, they're raising the question of what should America be next? What should America become? Okay, let me tell you something. If you are in communist China, if you are in Thailand, if you are in Laos, it is an understatement to say that this is taboo. Nobody can talk about the past this way. Nobody can talk about the present this way. Nobody can talk about the future this way. There is no Saudi Arabian rap music engaged in reflecting on how awful life in Saudi Arabia is for women, for example. There is no Saudi Arabian rap music talking about how tough it is to be gay. I've heard, as homophobic as American rap may be or something, I've heard tons of gay rap music. I've heard, you know, gay rap or talking about what it is to be gay. Sometimes seriously, sometimes joking around. You know, all that stuff. You get all the recrimination, and you know, the whole every possible complaint about modern life and modernity itself is so out in the open in American culture. It's a huge advantage. I mean, it brings them closer to nihilism, and it brings America uniquely close to, you know, that creative and destructive side of human nature that makes a better and different future possible. Just a really quick example. I remember I met this guy, and he was black guy, born and raised in England. And I said just a few words about police brutality and police violence. Like it really wasn't like a long conversation. Like I forget, we were talking about something else in politics, and I was like, yeah, you know, and by the way, I wasn't making any claim about him. I was really just talking about my own experience and my own perspective. I wasn't saying like, you know how it is, or you've been through this. I was just saying, well, you know, with the police, you know, this is how it goes. I remember this guy, even though he was black, he was British black, he responded with absolutely zero irony. And he was highly motivated. He immediately insisted to me that I was wrong, that there is no better police service in the world than the British Bobby. That was how he put it. The British Bobby. This was his pet name for the British police. And he said, anyone in England knows if you ever have trouble, you can go up and ask the local policeman and he'll help you out. He's your best friend. He gave me this propaganda statement about how wonderful the cops were in England. And I'm just sitting there looking at this guy like, it's so foreign to me. It's so alien to me, and it makes my skin crawl. And I'm just saying, this guy, I don't think he's ignorant. I don't think I think he's someone who reads the newspaper once a week or something. I'm not saying he's super political. I think he does know examples of the police being corrupt and the police being brutal and just violent and explosive. I think he does know those things, but he's asserting this nationalistic propaganda narrative on top of it. He's imposing this false optimism and saying, no, you have to live up to it. A lot of cultures are like that around the world. I mean, again, whether you're talking about Muslim culture or whether you're talking about communist culture, I'm going to be real with you. I've never dealt with that side of Japanese culture. I had friends who lived and worked in Japan who said to me, look, dude, you're not going to cope with it here. Like, who warned me, like, you're not going to, this kind of thing was being discussed or being hinted at. I don't know how willing the Japanese are to engage in the critique of their culture. But, I wouldn't generalize too widely. But, I remember I had one French friend. He's a fat guy and not vegan. And I remember he said to me, he spoke English fluently, but with this thick French accent. And I just recognized in him, like, oh, okay, so you're really willing to criticize the city. Like, I was kind of careful with him, like talking about London, talking about Paris, and then talking about places like Bangkok and Vientiane. And he was like, oh, you know how it is. Wherever you live, you have to shit on it, It was just, I do not know what percentage of French people are like that, but he just went on to say that he thought, wherever you live, you have to become the harshest possible critic of the culture and the economy and the political conditions. Okay, so look, I just want to point out, I'm keeping it real with you guys. I didn't talk about human rights. I didn't talk about freedom of speech. I didn't talk about any bullshit here. All right, and that's, I think, what most people would fall back on. They'd say, well, the difference between Islam and democracy is freedom of speech and human rights. Or, well, the difference between people in communist China and people in the United States of America is human rights. No, it's not. No, it's not. I mean, that's part of the bullshit nationalist narrative, right? I really want to get at something a little bit deeper here. And I know it's a polluted term. I know it's a term probably none of us are comfortable using unironically, but you can talk about counterculture. You can talk about the extent to which a culture is really engaged in the critique of itself, in which it's really radically open to challenging and overturning its own assumptions. And then the life of a dissident intellectual within that culture. I'm sorry, briefly, guys, this is the last thing of the video. We'll wrap it up now. If anyone wants any last comments, this is your last chance. But, I'm sorry, most of you haven't lived in all these countries. You don't have a sense of this, okay? What do you think the life of a dissident intellectual is like in Sri Lanka? What do you think the life of a dissident intellectual is like in Myanmar, in Cambodia, in Thailand, in communist China, in Iran? Now, what do you think the life of a dissident intellectual is like in Paris, France, in Berlin, Germany, in Texas, in Austin, Texas? Let's be equally specific, okay? The role of the dissident intellectual and, the difference they can make and what they can do to change the world and make it a better place. All right. There are some cultures where that is suffocated and sidelined and blotted out. And there are some cultures where it's celebrated, So, if your critique of me is to say that I am suggesting or implicitly assuming or insinuating that some cultures are better than others, you're goddamn right.